You wake up every day with a feeling that you could be further ahead, more advanced, closer to the life you imagine. But for some reason, it always feels like something is pulling you back. And no, it's not a lack of ability. It's not a lack of opportunity. And it's definitely not a lack of information. The problem is more subtle than that. There is a pattern, invisible, repetitive, shaping your decisions every single day, and you don't even realize it. Andrew Carnegie used to say that people don't fail because of a lack of talent, but because of the way they repeatedly think. And here's the point no one tells you. You are not sabotaged by the world. You are sabotaged by an internal pattern. Think about it. How many times have you started something with energy, but stopped halfway? How many times have you said, "This time it's going to work," and days later, you were back in the exact same place? This is not a lack of discipline. This is an automatic mental pattern, a cycle. You get excited, you start, you face difficulty, you slow down, you procrastinate, you feel guilty, you restart. And this cycle keeps repeating, silently, until it becomes your identity. Now here's the most dangerous part. This pattern creates a false sense of effort. You feel like you're trying, but in reality, you're just repeating the same behavior. And your brain loves that, because your brain doesn't want evolution. It wants comfort. It prefers the familiar, even if it's mediocre, over the unknown that could make you grow. That's why you sabotage yourself. Not because you want to fail, but because your system is programmed to keep you safe. But there's a problem with that. Too much safety comes at a cost. It costs your dreams. It costs your potential. It costs the future you could build. And until you identify this pattern, you remain trapped in it. Now, pay close attention to this. Your results don't come from what you do once. They come from what you repeat. And if what you repeat is a pattern of avoidance, distraction, and delay, your results cannot be different. You don't need more motivation. You need awareness. Because the moment you become aware of the pattern, you create the first real opportunity to break it. Here's what changes the game. Interrupt the pattern. Not tomorrow. Not when you feel ready. But at the exact moment it begins. When the urge to delay appears, you act. When the excuse shows up, you notice it and you don't accept it. When the automatic impulse comes, you consciously choose to do something different. At first, it will feel uncomfortable because you're going against something you've repeated for years. But that's exactly what creates change. It's not intensity. It's conscious consistency. Small different decisions, repeated every day, create a new identity. And over time, you stop being the person who starts and quits and become the person who starts and continues. And that changes everything. Because success is not about starting. It's about not stopping. Now answer me honestly. What is the pattern you've already noticed that is holding you back? And more importantly, are you going to keep repeating it? Or are you finally going to break it today? Because the truth is, there is a very specific moment where everything happens. It's not at the beginning. It's not at the end. It's in the middle. It's exactly at the point where the initial excitement is gone, and the result hasn't shown up yet. That's where almost everyone quits. And not because they can't do it, but because they misinterpret what's happening. When it gets hard, the mind automatically translates it as, "This isn't working." But that's not true. Most of the time, it's exactly the opposite. It's the sign that you've left autopilot. It's the point where real growth begins. But that point is not comfortable. It's slow. It's repetitive. It feels invisible. And that's where the most dangerous sabotage comes in. The need to feel progress all the time. If you don't see quick results, you lose belief. If you don't feel evolution, you slow down. If you don't get immediate reward, you stop. But real growth doesn't work like that. It happens in silence. For days, weeks, sometimes months. It feels like nothing has changed. Until one day, everything changes. But that day only comes for those who didn't quit before. Now think with complete honesty. How many times were you close to evolving, but left before the turning point? How many times did you abandon something? Not because it didn't work, but because it hadn't worked yet. That is self-sabotage, and it comes disguised as logic. It's not working. Maybe this isn't for me. I'll try again later. But deep down, it's just an elegant way of quitting. And the more you repeat this, the more your brain learns. I start, but I don't finish. And that becomes identity. Now look at the impact of that. You don't just lose results. You lose trust in yourself. Because every time you stop halfway, you send a silent message to your mind. I don't follow through. And that weighs on you. It blocks future decisions. It reduces your boldness. It makes you play smaller. But here's the good news. This pattern can be broken. And not with something complex, but with something simple and difficult at the same time. You need to stop negotiating with yourself. When you decide to do something, it's no longer a suggestion. It's a commitment. No internal debate. No emotional justification. No, not today. You execute. Even without motivation. Even without desire. Even without guarantees. Because that's how confidence is built. Not with big promises, but with small daily proofs. And every time you do what you said you would do, you strengthen something powerful. Self-respect. And when you have self-respect, discipline stops being effort and becomes your default. Now there is an even deeper point. You don't need to win the whole day. You just need to win the moment. That exact moment. When you would choose the easy path. If you win that moment, you change direction. And if you change direction consistently, you change your life. It's not about being perfect. It's about not repeating the same conscious mistake. It's about recognizing the pattern and choosing differently, even if it's just 1% better. Because that 1% repeated becomes transformation. Now I want you to be brutally honest. What is the moment in your day when you sabotage yourself the most? Is it when you wake up? Is it when you need to start something important? Is it when you feel discomfort? Identify it, because that is the exact point where your new version begins. And from now on, you have two options. Continue being the person who understands all of this, but doesn't apply it, or become the person who finally decides, today, I don't repeat the same pattern. And that decision, even if small, is the beginning of everything. And there is something even deeper happening, something almost no one notices. You don't sabotage yourself only in big actions. You sabotage yourself in the details, in how you start your day, in how you respond to discomfort, in the small choices that seem insignificant. Because it's not the big decision that defines your life. It's the small decisions repeated. That's where the pattern lives. And that's why it's so hard to break. Because it doesn't shout. It whispers. It comes in the form of, just today. I'll do it later. It's not a problem. And when you realize it, you're back in the same place as always. Now, pay very close attention to this. Your current life is a perfect reflection of the pattern you repeat. Not what you want, not what you plan, but what you do every single day. And that may sound harsh, but it's also liberating. Because if a pattern created your current reality, a new pattern can create a completely different one. But here's the point that separates those who change from those who stay stuck. Most people try to change results. Few people change behavior. And almost no one changes identity. But that's exactly where the game is. As long as you see yourself as someone who tries, struggles, sometimes succeeds, you remain stuck. Because your identity will always pull you back. Now imagine the opposite. Imagine you start seeing yourself as someone who does what needs to be done, even without motivation, even without recognition, even without immediate results. That changes everything. Because now you're no longer depending on motivation. You're operating from a pattern. And pattern is stronger than emotion. But this change doesn't happen through positive thinking. It happens through proof. You need to prove to yourself, repeatedly, that you are that person. And how do you do that? With small actions, consistent, non-negotiable. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it has to be real. Because every time you do what you said you would do, you build a new identity. And every time you break that, you reinforce the old one. Simple as that. Now let me show you something that can change how you act starting today. You don't need to win the day. You need to win the next move. Just the next one. Don't think about the whole thing. Don't think about the final result. Think about the next step. Because the pattern lives in the next step. And if you start winning one step, then another, when you look back, you are no longer the same person. Now let me ask you a direct question. If someone observed your routine in silence, without hearing your intentions, without knowing your plans, would they say you are building the life you claim you want? Or would they say you are just busy, repeating the same pattern every single day? That answer may be uncomfortable, but it's necessary, because real change begins with truth. No filters, no excuses. Now listen to this carefully. You don't need more time. You need more truth in your actions. You don't need more motivation. You need less negotiation. And you don't need to wait for the perfect moment, because the perfect moment is always the moment you decide not to repeat the pattern. And that moment is now. So decide. Are you going to act the way you always have and reinforce who you've been? Or are you going to do something different, even if small, even if imperfect, but enough to start breaking the cycle? Because in the end, it's not about what you know. It's about what you repeat. And what you repeat today is creating exactly who you will become tomorrow. You wake up every day with a feeling that you could do more, be more, achieve more. But deep down, something pulls you back. It's not a lack of ability. It's not a lack of opportunity. It's not a lack of information. It's a pattern. A silent, automatic, invisible pattern. A pattern you repeat without realizing. And the most dangerous part is that it feels normal. You start the day with good intentions. Today I'll do it differently. Today I'll focus. Today I'll move forward. But then small decisions begin to happen. You postpone an important task. You choose comfort over progress. You say, I'll do it later. And when you realize it, the day is gone again. And this cycle repeats every single day. It's not a big mistake holding you back. It's micro decisions, repeated consistently. That is self-sabotage. And it doesn't come like a clear enemy. It comes disguised as logic. I'm tired. It's not the right moment. I need to prepare more. But the truth is simple. You're not preparing. You're protecting yourself. Protecting yourself from discomfort, from risk, from judgment, from failure. Because growth requires discomfort. And the human mind is programmed to avoid pain. So it creates intelligent justifications to keep you exactly where you are, in the average zone, where nothing hurts, but nothing evolves either. And that's where the danger is, because living in the average doesn't feel urgent. But it's a trap. Days turn into weeks. Weeks turn into months. Months turn into years. And when you look back, you realize it wasn't a lack of talent. It was a lack of consistent action. It was the pattern, the same pattern, repeated in silence. Now pay attention to this. You don't need more motivation. You need awareness. Awareness to recognize the exact moment you sabotage yourself. That second, when you know what you should do, but choose not to do it. That's where everything happens. That's where your future is decided. Not in big moments, but in small invisible choices. So the question is not, what do I need to learn? The question is, what do I already know I should do, but keep avoiding? Because the answer is already inside you. It always has been. And as long as you keep ignoring it, you'll keep going in circles. Now imagine another reality, a version of you that sees the pattern and breaks it. that acts even without motivation, that executes even with fear, that moves forward even without guarantees. That version is not special. It just made a different decision. It stopped negotiating with its own sabotage. It understood that discipline is doing what needs to be done, especially when you don't feel like it. And at the beginning, it will be uncomfortable. It will feel strange. Your mind will try to pull you back. But if you persist, something changes. The pattern breaks, and a new pattern is born. A pattern of execution, of consistency, of evolution. And little by little, your identity changes. You stop being someone who tries and become someone who does. And that changes everything. Because success is not an event. It's a pattern. Just like failure. The difference is which pattern you choose to repeat. So today, I don't try to change everything. Just observe. Observe your choices. Observe your thoughts. Observe the exact moment you escape. And when that happens, don't overthink. Just act, even if small, even if imperfect, even if uncomfortable. And when you begin to notice, there's no way to go back to being the same. Because before, you were living on autopilot. Now you see the moment your mind tries to deceive you. You see the excuse being created in real time. You see comfort calling you, just like it always has. But now there is a difference. And knowing creates responsibility. From this moment on, it's no longer ignorance. It's choice. You begin to realize that the problem was never external. It was never time. It was never circumstances. It was never people. It was always the internal pattern. The way you think defines the way you act. And the way you act defines the life you build. Simple as that, but not easy. Because breaking a pattern requires confrontation. Confrontation with yourself, with your habits, with your excuses, with your current version. And that hurts. It hurts to realize you could have gone further. It hurts to realize you held yourself back. It hurts to realize you accepted less than you were capable of. But that pain is necessary because it wakes you up. It takes you out of a numb state and puts you into a state of decision. Now let me tell you something directly. You don't need to trust yourself to start. You just need to act. Confidence doesn't come before. It comes after. After action. After repetition. After proof. You build confidence by doing, not by waiting to feel something different. Because if you depend on motivation, you will lose every day. Motivation is unstable. It goes up, it goes down, it disappears. Discipline doesn't. Discipline is a decision. And decision doesn't depend on emotion. It depends on positioning. It's you saying, I will do it, regardless of how I feel. And that separates those who stay from those who move forward. Because most people wait to feel like it. Few act even without feeling like it. And those few are the ones who build uncommon results. Now notice an important detail. Self-sabotage doesn't only happen when you stop. It also happens when you stay busy with what doesn't matter. When you trade the essential for the urgent. When you do a lot, but not what actually moves the needle. That is also a pattern. A sophisticated pattern. Because it gives you the feeling of productivity without generating real progress. You end the day tired, but you didn't move forward. And that keeps you stuck. So it's not enough to just do. You need to do what matters. What is hard? What you avoid? What actually creates growth? And that requires clarity. Brutal clarity. No romanticizing. No self-deception. Direct question. What if I did it every day would change my life? And then, why am I not doing it? That answer will confront you. Because it will expose the pattern. And when the pattern is exposed, it loses strength. Now a new level begins. The level of identity. As long as you see yourself as someone who procrastinates, you will keep procrastinating. As long as you see yourself as inconsistent, You will act inconsistently because you will always act according to who you believe you are. So real change doesn't start with action. It starts with identity. You need to decide, who am I now? Not who you were, not who you've been, but who you decide to be from this point forward. And that decision must be supported by action. Because identity without action is illusion. But action without identity doesn't sustain. Both need to walk together. You decide who you are and prove it every single day, even when no one is watching, especially when no one is watching, because it's in the invisible that the pattern is built. It's in the silence that discipline is strengthened. It's in repetition that transformation happens. Now let me give you a perspective that changes everything. You are not building results. You are building patterns, and patterns inevitably generate results. So stop focusing on the final outcome. Focus on the daily pattern. What you do when you wake up. What you do when you are tired. What you do when no one is watching. Because that is what defines the game. And here is the point that few accept. You don't need to be at your best to win. You just need to not sabotage yourself at your worst. Because consistency is not about perfection. It's about continuity. It's about not breaking the cycle, even if it's small, even if it's slow, but constant. Now imagine this, 365 days, without sabotaging yourself. 365 days, doing the basics well. 365 days, without negotiating with your excuses. You would not be the same person. It would be impossible, because the pattern would have changed. And when the pattern changes, identity changes. And when identity changes, reality follows. So stop waiting for the perfect moment. It won't come. Stop waiting to feel ready. You won't feel it. Stop searching for the perfect strategy. It doesn't exist. What exists is execution. Imperfect, incomplete, but consistent. And that is more than enough. Now the decision is in front of you. Continue repeating the same pattern and accept the same results. Or break the cycle, even if it's uncomfortable, even if it's difficult, even if it's slow at the beginning, but real. Because in the end, it's not about intensity. It's about consistency. It's not about talent. It's about pattern. And it's not about luck. It's about choice. And from now on, every time you notice the sabotage, you will remember this. And in that moment, you have two options. Repeat who you've always been, or act like who you decided to become. And it is in that choice, simple, silent, daily, that your life is built. Every single day. No exceptions.